What is up, enthusiasts? It is Cedar Flags here, and welcome back to another one of my videos. Today, I'm going to be talking about some more never-built attractions. This is my 5th installment in this never-built series, and let me just say, I absolutely love the high demand for this series. Never-built attractions are a very popular and interesting topic, because, well, a lot of us think of an alternate universe where these end up being built. And it's really interesting how some of these may have changed the industry forever, and the coaster industry as we know it. And it's also really interesting to think of some rides that were almost scrapped, like Maverick at Cedar Point. But anyways, we are going to be talking about some more attractions that never made it past the planning phase. Today is the 5th installment, so I got some pretty interesting concepts for all of you, including a never-built theme park in Indiana, and one of the most extreme early attractions to ever be conceived. This is Cedar Flags, and today, I'm going to be talking about 5 more never-built amusement attractions. For our first amusement attraction, we are going all the way to Sweden to talk about Lisaberg, one of my highest bucket list parks personally, and home to some great roller coasters like Balder, Valkyria, and most notably Helix, their star attraction, which is a mock multi-launch coaster. This ride is loved by many, with its amazing setting and incredible elements throughout the ride, but did you know that this was not the first concept for a major coaster to be located here? A mock hypercoaster was actually proposed before, and almost came into fruition instead of Helix. A few years ago, Lisaberg revealed former plans for a cancelled mock hypercoaster. This was going to be their new for 2014 coaster, which is the same year that Helix came out, so it's safe to say this was one of the concepts for Helix. Basically saying if this happened, Helix wouldn't have happened. To explain it, it was a terrain hypercoaster. Now, the details on this ride are pretty sparse. We don't know much outside of the renderings that we have. But what we do know is that the lift hill and drop would be near where Aerospin is, it would be well over 200 feet tall, the drop would be taller than the lift hill height, making it a terrain coaster, and it would take up the whole length of the park, as opposed to wrapping around rides like Lisebergbanen and the S&S Scream and Swing. To differentiate from Helix, this, as opposed to a twister layout like Helix has, this would be more of an out and back layout. So why didn't this happen? It was cancelled because, well, they wanted a launch coaster, and they felt like a multi-launch would fit well more into the environment of Lisaberg than a massive hypercoaster. 2 reasons including that launch coasters were starting to appear more and more around 2014, and, well, it was definitely way more unique. Plus, it was nowhere near as tall as the Hyper, which means it would have more of a secluded feel. Needless to say, Helix is a smash hit and a favorite among many worldwide. We are going from a ride that was never built in the early 2010s to a ride that was never built in the early 1920s. More than 100 years ago, one of the most insane water rides of all time was proposed. Not to a specific theme park, but it was surely patented. I like to call it the Cannonball. Why do I like to call it the Cannonball? Well, have you ever been to a circus or outdoor show where there's a human cannonball, a human that launches out of a cannon? Well, think of that as an amusement ride. I'm not talking about a launch coaster, I'm talking about a legit capsule that launches out of a cannon. This was, in fact, a concept designed by 2 New York City inventors in the early 1900s. It, well, probably was the most insane water ride of all time. The ride experience would go like this. People would get into a capsule, an enclosed capsule, and it would get into an electromagnetic cannon. And, well, let's just say this could have inspired some LSM and LIM launches today. With a similar mechanism to those, it would launch out of the cannon at very fast speeds, go up to 200 feet in the air, and then land onto a water slide that slides into a pool, which goes back to the station. What? So, why was it never built? Well, isn't it kind of obvious? Any sort of miscalculation would result in certain death, and well, this just seems way too unsafe even for those standards of the times. And nowadays, yeah, this would definitely not fly. Pun probably intended, but anyway, it's probably better off that this ride never came to be, even though it would probably be one of the most extreme rides of all time. Going from the East Coast to the West Coast, we are going to be going to California's Great America in the Bay Area. This is a beautiful park with an incredible roller coaster collection, including one of the very first single rail roller coasters of all time. But today we are not going to be talking about Railblazer, we are going to be talking about a long lost B&M Hypercoaster. So if you don't know, in December of 2016, they proposed a massive 5-year plan for the park. Now, being over 5 years after this was posted, it is safe to say that this will not come into fruition, or at least some parts will. But what did this plan include? Well, it included a decent amount of rides that never saw the light of day. This master plan included a 230-foot tall Windseeker ride by Mondial, a 140-foot tall S&S Scream and Swing, a slingshot, a mini family steel coaster, a water park expansion, a family-friendly flat ride, an extended kiddie area, an extended entrance plaza, an entertainment zone consisting of restaurants and shops, and most importantly, a massive 245-foot tall B&M hypercoaster. 245 feet tall. That would easily be the tallest B&M hyper in the country and the second tallest in the world. This plan was truly gargantuan, and I really feel like it's inspired off of Cedar Fair's expansions on the Carowinds and Kings Island in the past 15 years, because I feel like at a point in time, Cedar Fair wanted to focus on California's Great America a lot, and there's really not a reason why these plans were cancelled. Someone might blame it on COVID-19, but that was 3 years after the fact. I really feel like this was such an early proposal that they didn't want to get too much into it. Instead, we got an RMC single rail coaster and a rumored new coaster coming soon. So even though we didn't get the massive B&M hyper, at least there was a bit of a silver lining. Now, we are going to be going from San Francisco to a place near Indianapolis, named Morgantown, Indiana. We are going to be talking about Electric Park, an amusement park that was supposed to be built in the center of Indiana in the 1980s. Now, this was going to be a very interesting park. When most amusement parks are built, they're designed to be modern, designed to fit with the times, and designed to be an innovative environment. But this park was going to be anything but that. The creators of this park, which were the Historic Amusement Foundation, were planning on making this a historic looking park, similar to how Cannonball's is preserved today. It was going to be in the style of the early 1900s, and it was going to be surrounded by retro buildings and retro amusement park rides. This was proposed all the way back in 1988, and was supposed to be finished by the 1990s. Anyways, what was so cool about this park? Well, like I said, it was going to look historic, but more notably than that, they were going to accept donations from amusement parks all across the country, including buildings and rides. The most notable donation that they got was going to be Wildcat at Idora Park in Youngstown, Ohio, which closed a half a decade prior. Fun fact, my dad got to ride that ride. Like I said, the idea was going to be very similar to how Cannonball's is today, relocated older rides. So anyway, why did this not happen? Well, it's a pretty straightforward answer. They didn't get enough funding, and that's really why most of these attractions weren't built. This was supposed to have a $30 million budget, and they barely got $5 million. So for all you Hoosiers out there, all you got are Indiana Beach, the Indianapolis Zoo, and Holiday World. Unfortunately for Idora Park's Wildcat, it would stand SB&O and slightly damaged up until 2001 when it would get demolished. A lot of you know the story about Action Park in Vernon, New Jersey, a park that opened up in the mid-70s and had so many lawsuits and controversy surrounding it from the park's safety standards, it closed in the mid-1990s. A much lesser known fact, especially for your newer enthusiasts out there, this park actually had a little bit of a comeback in the early 2010s, rebranded as Action Park once again. The park featured much safer attractions than back then, but they still were not afraid of taking risks, and they tried to resurrect an old attraction that was pretty infamous for the park. The old attraction I'm talking about is the Cannonball Loop. Many of you have seen this picture at the very least. It was one of the most infamous attractions, causing many injuries, and I mean, look at it, it looks insane. But did you know that this ride was going to come back in a modern fashion? Introducing the Sky Caliber. First introduced in 2014, this was a concept to make a safe, respectable version of the Cannonball Loop. Many differences would be put in place, including a vertical drop, a trap door, and being locked inside of a capsule within the water slide. This would keep you from hitting your head on something, or you hitting your body on the other side of the water slide due to a lack of centrifugal force. This attraction was actually built at a testing ground, but unfortunately was never built at the park. If you don't think this qualifies for the video since it was technically built, well, oh well, it's my video. The point I'm trying to make is the ride never opened to the public, and only Action Park staff got to test it, and, well, this was a prototype. This wasn't even the actual ride. So, what happened to this concept? Unfortunately, the rebranded Action Park's comeback didn't last too long, and a lot of controversy from olden days came back, and they had to rebrand to a much safer name, Mountain Creek. So what happened to the Sky Caliber? Well, along with the new concept of Action Park, it faded into obscurity, and no one else than the testing staff of Action Park got to check it out. So that was my video. I absolutely love making these never built videos. They are one of my most entertaining series to make, and I know that they're a lot of your favorite series to enjoy on YouTube. I want to do more variants of this. I have a new video in the makes that will be pretty unique. So, anyways, what did you think about this video? Have you heard of all of these attractions? Have you only heard of a few? Let me know. This is Cedar Flags, and I'll see you all later.